Joining today's podcast is my good friend, Casey Mulholland, owner of Kinetic Pro Performance and inventor of the awesome Kinetic Pro Sleeve. Welcome, Casey. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Wayne.
Yeah, you've had a lot of success as a player and a trainer. You were drafted by the Dodgers in 2015 out of the University of South Florida. And after your injury, you began a quest to find better ways to train and evaluate pitchers, leading to you to start Kinetic Pro Performance training facility and several great products such as Kinetic Pro Sleeve, bands, and apps to optimize training. Casey, as a pitcher yourself, you've been a big proponent of control, command, and sequencing for a long time. So I wanted to talk to you about those and see how you learn those.
Yeah, it's great. No, I think it's funny. You and I have had some conversations in the past about obviously some of these things, and every time I leave our conversations, I think about my upbringing, and I think about the next generation that's kind of coming through the game. My dad actually just started coaching a little league team again, as something fun off to the
Oh,
sides,
cool.
and it's amazing to me how at a young age, we are oftentimes told to throw strikes or told to command the baseball. But it's not something we ever really truly practice at a high level or understand the practice of it. It's
Mhm.
not a skill that we oftentimes highlight in terms of great pitchers. It's something that I think is maybe deeply misunderstood in the game in many
Yeah.
cases. You have things like control and command that obviously are different things, but no, it's such an interesting topic and one that's not being talked about enough. So obviously, super happy to be here today to talk about
Oh,
it.
thanks. Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos online for training command, but they're really just training control. And if you were just working on throwing strikes, you're not working on command. Command to me is different and needed for things like funneling, pitching inside, to claim the full side of the plate. You can't do those things if you only have control. And I think some people don't really understand the difference. I define control as being able to throw strikes. I define command as the ability to throw the ball into any location you want, in or out of the strike zone. How do you define them? Are you on the same page, or do you have a little nuance difference?
No, I love the word you use there, location, in terms of command. And so I've always described it to our athletes as being able to wherever the catcher sets up, kind of hitting that spot, even if it's outside the zone. Sometimes we're envisioning, especially with today's game, right? Catchers are moving a lot behind the plate. They're trying to steal pitches. They're working different setups.
Mhm.
You have to be able to conceptually understand where you're trying to throw your pitch. And so if we're trying to command the ball to a certain location, we need to have that as a preset in our mind that, hey, I'm going to throw this breaking ball, for example, out of the zone on purpose. That's still
Right,
a commanded.
right. For like a put away pitch, I've seen guys throw 95 down the middle. They got two strikes, either by a strike or a foul, but we're never able to have a put away pitch.
Right?
And you need command to do that, you know?
A high whiff zone, I think, is important to understand conceptually when you're building a pitch. Where does this pitch often most successful? Things like sliders, things like curveballs. You'll find at the big league level, you'll see a lot of them. Most of the high whiff zone is out of the zone. So when we're starting to, again, as a pitcher, we want to practice that pitch. We need to know up front. I'm going to build a pitch. I'm going to practice, commanding that pitch. I need to know where the most success is potentially for me to throw that pitch into, and then take it in a game and trial run it. How does this actually work out there? So being able to quantify if I actually executed that pitch or not, being able to understand on a higher level what pitches work off of what pitches. These are all things that I
Oh yeah, yeah,
don't
definitely.
talk about enough. So
Yeah, and I think it's partly because uh, you could have measured control easily by looking at the balls and strikes. Command hasn't been so easy. You either had to visually look at the target while someone threw, and then it's hard to tell the ball dropped. So you think it visually think I hit one letter, but it actually was just lower. And I'm sure you learned that with your command tracker. Uh, but the command tracker actually holds you really accountable. It actually shows you the location where the ball really hit. And I don't think people have really had that before. And I've noticed when pitchers use it, uh, at first they think they're going to have great command, and then they throw, they're like, oh, like Micah Posey was on yesterday, and he was talking about the DBU pitchers who were throwing in. At first, they thought they'll do great, and they're getting like 20% command rate. Eventually, through their season, they broke their all-time strikeout record for the school. All right, so it works over time, but it's something you have to develop. How have you seen that your use of the command tracker?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, Wayne, awesome stuff with building the command tracker itself. It's
That was a lot of work. We to make it durable, to withstand. Like I bought I got a hack attack, throws 100 miles an hour. I had buckets of balls and pounded that target because at first it used to crack until we developed a design that it doesn't crack. And that was important to me because I didn't want someone like you getting a target, having 1,000 pitchers throw on it, and then having something crack. I wanted it to be durable. It had to work, but also had to be durable.
I mean, the design of it's been it's hard. Like I told you the first time we talked, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you built it to be that durable over time. That's been one of our biggest issues. We have so many hard throwers that come through our facility over the years, and when you got guys throwing 95 plus on a pad every day, I was blowing through command trainers left and right. So it's that aside.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because when Sean was first learning, I was buying targets and he was shredding them. All right, it's like $300 a target, and then I made my own, and finally, and actually, the last one I made is still standing in the back, like 6 years later. Because I was blowing through those targets left and right. With the command tracker, that thing's going to be there for years.
It was a month-to-month purchase for us. I mean, we were buying 1 or 2 a month, and we were going through them, especially in the offseason, the pro guys. I'd go through 2 in a month, and it was like, we're doing our job. Our guys are, hey, they're hitting the pad, which is great, right? But when you're throwing all your short boxes, all your bullpens, the sheer volume that was going through those things, I couldn't do it anymore. It was tough for me to justify the cost. We started playing with our own stuff, trying to figure out how do we tie zones up to a net. How do we do, like, we were doing all kind of crazy stuff to figure it out, but. And then
in the target it has a lifetime counter. So my target, the one I'm using right now, has over 3,500 impacts. So you can look at your target and it'll tell you the lifetime impact. So you'll know how many times that thing's been hit.
You'll have to show me where that is. I'd be curious.
I did that because I thought in the future, what if something something broke? Well, I want to know when it fails so I can fix that and make it more durable,
Right. Well, I think I'll tell you about the biggest thing that I think I've seen with that target in our facility, and it was day one, it was apparent, was the competition level amongst the guys. And when we talk about command as a skill, we're trying to develop that skill. The first thing I have to do is get our guys to buy in terms of, obtaining that skill, why it's important, and staying focused on creating better cues, just driving the focus level of our athletes across the board. And I think it was funny to me, we put up a bunch of those pads over the years with different models, different numbers, different dots, different colors, different whatever, and guys would always come in when we got a new one. Guys would get excited. They'd be like, oh, we got a new command trainer, and different perspective back there would challenge them in a different way. But over time, their interest level would fade. And when we started doing like short box games, we're having guys, throw 1v1 and tracking, like, okay, I want you to throw a breaking ball out of the zone. So we're throwing away from the command trainer, and guys throwing out of the zone. We never really had a way to track it. We were always kind of using a spreadsheet to kind of click on and add X's, it just got so messy, and it was never something we could scale with our athletes. We have 60 plus athletes through a day. We just couldn't get where we felt comfortable with it.
Well, that's a good point you bring up, because it generates those CSV files,
Right.
As a coach or a trainer, you could tell your guy, okay, I want you to throw a scripted bullpen number 22 or whatever, and or throw 35, pitches and free throw. It generates a CSV file, and now they're held accountable to their uh, performance. And now you have something measurable, like how often they hit a spot, the direction of their miss, all those things.
From a sheer coaching value, it's really obvious how quickly I can provide feedback to the athlete. I think from the inner athlete perspective, what like I said, we were getting guys to lose interest over time. So we could generate some of that initial interest with other targets, but
Right.
we would as it would fade, right? And guys wouldn't be as competitive. They didn't get the immediate feedback in the session. All of a sudden, what we've got so far in our facility is, I mean, over the weeks of using it here, is that attention to detail prolonged itself. The immediate feedback with the different noises, like the cash register, right,
It's
and
Zing. Yeah.
the quickness of the actual app itself providing the feedback zone. Guys started to get creative, and then obviously also the autonomy to choose certain zones was key because I was having guys, what they learned is when they started playing against each other, they started to learn, I feel better about my slider being in this zone. I feel better about my fastball in that zone. So when they were competing against each other, I was letting them call and create their own zones. And I said, all right,
Right.
you can make this as easy or small as you want to. We'll assign point values to it, etc. And so they were putting together four squares. They were putting together, one zone. They were putting together, a whole half of the zone. I didn't care what
Yeah.
they selected. I just said you have to put in that spot.
Hmm.
And what you saw is guys immediately figuring out where their strengths were and where their weaknesses were, and then playing to their strengths in big situations. And so I
Right.
take that I take that to the game, and obviously you can see the immediate transition where a guy is in a situation where he needs to compete. He knows how to compete now. He knows where he feels most comfortable. That's a huge win for us across the board.
Well, yeah, definitely. And for a coach, knowing where he needs work is also critical too, because now you can say, okay, you're missing over here on your slider, and you're always missing down in the way. All right, so here's what I want you to do. We're going to throw a side with your slider. If you can't, like they always say, if it's important measure, you have to measure it. And I think for command, there really wasn't a way to really automate or measure command without a target like this.
Right.
And it had to be durable, it had to be small enough to work in a facility. you know
When we start talking about tendencies of athletes and athlete bias, so if I look at an athlete and I see that maybe their fastball, they like to throw it away more often than they like to throw it in. When I give them that autonomy to choose what they want to do, they have to create pitches. They have to hit spots. And what you find is some guys, they never address the inside part of the zone in
yeah.
practice. They're always working away, away, away. And you ask them, hey, why is it you're always throwing your fastball slider away? And they'll tell you, well, that's just when I was younger, we only worked, to the outer half and or getting the ball down or getting the
That's
ball
got to
up.
be great to know as a trainer, because now you part of the training is knowing your athlete. So when you know he has a fear of pitching inside or down or whatever location, now you know I have to make him face his fears and overcome them, right?
Exactly right. Well, the other piece of that, and my passion, my background is mostly in like workload management, right?
Yeah.
And so when I talk about oftentimes with guys, we look at the sheer volume of throws in a day that guys make. And so intensity, and again, this is a whole other discussion, but intensity is intensity in many cases when we're measuring the output. So if I have a guy who throws, let's say we'll use a round number, let's say a guy's gonna throw 100 balls in a day.
Right.
If I spend 60 to 70 of those throws in long toss or plyos, and then I only have let's say we do plyos for 20, we do long toss for 70, and I'm left with 10 throws at the end of the day to do command training with. Um,
Mhm.
well, I need to be really creative about how I switch that volume up in the day. What the command tracker allows me to do is basically I can get our guys over and throw more volume to certain zones and start to establish certain pitches and more useful manners than just long toss
Yeah.
aim out the
Right. And
field.
be more targeted about what you're working on. Yeah.
exactly right. And then we actually had our guys stand back at the back of the facility and actually shuffle their feet and throw at the tracker. And I know it's strong enough to do that.
Mhm.
Again, if we're utilizing the target for different modalities at this point to kind of start to explore how do we give guys that need the emphasis to design and build command awareness of command. If we need them to spend more time commanding the baseball, what does that really mean? And how do we if we're just throwing an aimless long toss all the time, then I think we start to maybe miss the point. We're not allowing that
Well,
athlete to.
that's a great thing you bring up because I think the best way to develop command is to always throw to a target whenever you're throwing. If you're playing catch or long toss, never throw at just a big wall. Only if the only time I would say to do that is if you're really trying to work on your mechanics to get your velocity up. But that's kind of like working on leg day or upper chest day. It's like they're different things. So when you're working on command, you ought to be thrown to a target. So I think that's really important because mentally, I think a lot of command comes from what's in your mind. That mind of focus on that target in that location and having the vision in your mind of that ball hitting that spot.
Yeah, it's proprioception, right? I mean, we talk about proprioception and the awareness of that. I think, it's funny, again, going back to this idea of like these little, these little leaguers that I got a chance to kind of be around and then kind of seeing our elite level MLB arms. I'll give you a funny story. So actually, this was yesterday. We had an MLB arm that came in through a season bullpen. His wife having a baby and he had a little break. And so he came into the bullpen. So at like 2 o'clock, I'm working with him and watching him throw and the attention to detail, right? And then by 6 o'clock, I'm out at a little league practice, and I have these,
That's a good range to work with. You see a
it,
lot of different things.
you really understand, and it's so funny to hear the cues from the parents, the teachings from the parents, right? It's so
The
strikes,
parents.
glove side, hey, make sure you reach out, make sure you do all these different things. And you go, the biggest difference that I noticed with, the MLB arms, especially, you have, I mean, elite level college guys in here too. But the MLB arms, a lot of those guys are so seasoned. They've thrown so many pitches over so many years. They could do it with their eyes closed. They know exactly what they're doing. It's you don't have to. For them, they're so focused on such a smaller range of miss. They're so
They
focused.
know what they're doing. They're professionals and they know what they have to work on. They work on it.
It's I think their attention to, and this is going to be simplifying it quite a bit, but their attention to detail of miss, their attention to detail of movement in terms of the pitch itself. Um, One of the things I've noticed so far is that the pro guys that have come in that have used our command tracker, they actually love the idea of being able to see like, hey, I'm throwing a cutter here. I'm going to start it at this number and let it come off to this number.
Yeah.
And we've had dialogues of that. And to say like, even the outer zone, they love throwing the high whip zone away and tracking that over time. And
And
I, you know,
probably tagging the good misses as well, right?
Exactly right. And so when these guys, again, giving them that feedback, the immediate feedback, the attention to detail, the one thing that I've been able to do, because you can select a single zone or you can select the entire, half of the zone or however you want to establish that zone, the demographics to build awareness and feedback. I need to be able to scale as a coach. I need to be able to take it to our little guys and go, hey, I just want you to hit the zone. I don't care where in the zone it is. I just want your focus is just throwing it on the board.
Yeah. Have you seen the scripted bullpens where some of them are just the entire thing and some of them are focus? Those are meant for little leaguers down to pros,
Right.
and you can, as a coach, I said to you earlier that I always thought that good coaches are going to find way better ways to use that target than I thought of. So that's why I was really happy to have you get it because I know you're going to come up with some really great ways to work with pros to little leaguers, different, levels.
I always say this that the goal of the coach should never be to. I think in today's game, and maybe you'd agree with this, but in today's game, we have too many coaches that feel the need to be a physicist or to be an engineer or to be, a data analyst, right? Um, Coaches should be great coaches. They should be people who are able to build great relationships, establish great buy-in, great technology should allow the coach to scale creativity. And so when we're able to get a tool, and this is why, again, I love being able to do this. Uh, I've been able to just have so much creativity with our young guys, with our older guys, like you talk about the scripted bullpens with different taggings, different, recordings of information for myself. But when I'm able to talk to a player about is so direct, and my return to them is so direct, it allows my coaching to be, I'm not fumbling things, I'm not trying to tag other things, I'm not trying to do too much on the iPad. I'm able to actually just say, hey, here's what we're gonna do today. Here's the game. Here's how it's laid
Right,
out.
right. Like the target and like a TrackMan, all those things. Those are just tools that are on your tool belt. You
Exactly
know,
right.
and
If
you're going to pull that out when you want to get buy-in from the player or you want to illustrate something to them. Yeah.
I need to be able to create applicable cues, and allow that athlete to really focus in on those cues. So for me, when I'm able to track, again, seamlessly tracking something in the background, it allows me to come to that at a later date and then reestablish or represent that information to the future. That's technology working at its finest. And I think again, we've built some technology here at KP. That's always been my focus, is can we make something user friendly, and that scales? Can the UX UI be good enough to make it seamless? There's a reason why the iPhone, is my grandmother can use the iPhone, and my little sister could use the iPhone when she was young. Like, we all have been able to touch the iPhone and kind of get into it. It's because that interface is creative. What I love about the command tracker in the short box, in the bullpen, it's when you set it up, you get it on, at the very onset of it. Even if you take everything else out, when you tap a spot, you throw to that spot, it gives you your immediate feedback. You go, that's it. That was the easiest thing. That was
Thank you.
as a coach, that's one of the greatest feedback tools, and amongst one of the things that I don't get enough attention to from my athletes. And it nailed it right out of the gate. First pitch, it was like, that was it. That's what we're looking
Well,
for.
thank you, because I was an engineer for 30 years.
Right.
I've been director of engineering for places like Turtle Beach, and I always thought that if I have to have a user manual, I haven't done my job. Now, Command Tracker has a user manual, but I noticed that you really don't have to read it. And I have another great guy, Roman, that works on the software with me. He's brilliant. And what we try to do together is make it so that it's intuitive, that you don't have to read a manual. And part of the ways that we do that is we use it. Then we have coaches like you use it, and we get your feedback. And I'm sure you've done that with your KP sleeve as well, right? You have guys use it and they give you feedback about, hey, it would be better if we have this feature or that, right?
Always a growth process. Maybe not always fun, but always a growth process. Absolutely. So
Yeah. Yeah. Beta testers are definitely needed,
right. Let me ask you this, Wayne. What's the most creative uses you've seen? I mean, obviously you have the daily use, short box, bullpen. What are some other
I have a
uses?
friend. I have a good friend, David Mayberry. He's got a training place in Philly. He has a target, and he's brilliant. And one of the ways that he uses it, he puts it on a cart at first base, so it's up a little higher. And what's he doing with his infielders? They field the ball. They have to throw the target at first base. So he's training them to throw accurately at first base. Another one is place it to the right of second base. And now when you're working with the catchers, you have them throw to second base. Now you're training them to throw accurately to second base. So it's not only pop time, it's how accurate the time was. Because you can have a great pop time, but if the guy's got to reach up to catch the ball, he's not going to, have as much time to tag the guy out. And I think there are other coaches that have come up with other ways that I never thought of that are great to use a target.
That's really cool. I feel like we've talked about. I feel like shortstops, I feel like second basemen, catchers, outfielders, they make those throws enough, and there's an awareness of where they're trying. When I played outfield, I, again, wasn't a great outfielder, but when I played outfield, I went to Ole Miss and two-way for a minute.
Well, you had to be pretty good to play there.
I was all right. I wasn't bad. But I always had a spot that I was trying to hit in the infield grass when I was trying to skip a ball to the plate. There was always like I knew when it came out of my hand that ball's gonna carry too far, that ball is too short, and I would two hop it or single hop it. Sometimes you try to get it in the air, etc. But I always knew about my range, my distance, etc. But it's amazing. We talked about proprioception earlier, and kind of the awareness of that, right? Like the ball never, it was just right out of the hand. I kind of had that awareness of like, oh, okay, that
You got to
ball,
have that feel. Yeah.
right. I had sort of an understanding of what was going to happen to the ball before it ever really, crossed the infield. Um, and I talk to kids today a lot. And for some reason, I don't know if this is a lack of gamification when kids are young or exploring skills, but you ask them about, hey, what did you feel there? Or how did that work for you? Whether it be, I've asked outfielders the same question, like, hey, when you really let it go, like I was asking a kid about the ball and spinning the ball, like, because, some guys, they run the ball really hard out of the outfield and it doesn't carry. And I was asking a kid about that, and he said he had never thought about it. He had never, like, it never even crossed his mind. He didn't know what I was talking about. And I've had multiple occurrences with that. And I wonder, so when you're young, you build that awareness. You build a lot of that through, just being with your friends and practice environments, et cetera. There's a lot of things going on that build those skills at an early age. But even with like pitchers, you ask them about like, hey, what did you feel at release there? Or you hear a lot of coaches talking about repeatability, and the ability to kind of do the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't feel like players maybe truly understand uh,
Well,
today's
maybe they
world.
don't. Well, maybe sometimes they don't have to if they're learning the skill. It's like I was talking to Dan Duquette about this, and he was saying that he lives near where Michael Jordan was growing up. That when he got cut from his team, he would go out and spend time throwing the ball from one location until he got 10 for 10 in the same spot. Then he would move to the other spot. And he was saying he had coaches in the Brewers that did that with some of their players, throw the baseball here in the same spot. And if you can throw 5 in a row, you can't move the next spot. And that kind of focus, that intense focus on that task, I think they don't have to think really about it. All they have to think about is, I need to do that. It
Right,
simplifies it. And
right,
internally, like when people say self-organizing, internally, their brain is figuring out how to do it, but the outer brain is kind of thinking of the goal.
right.
That's what I think.
It's yeah, you use the right term there, task. I think it's giving the right task, and I think that's
Yeah.
the. When I hear you talk about like the catchers having the board down at second base, it's getting the repeatability of that task, finding a way to get them to skip a ball to hit the board in a certain area, or to get them to throw the ball in the air for, or sorry, an outfielder skip a ball to hit the board in a certain area, an outfield or a catcher to, learn just playing with the board. I think is the way that I would look at it, right? You're just playing with a different option. You're gamifying a model, and I think
Well,
it's
with the target, if you noticed, there are consequences. In a normal bullpen, when they throw, the catcher moves and he catches it. They
right,
think they threw a great bullpen. In
right,
reality, they missed all their spots. Well, the target,
right,
I'm sure you found when they first throw to it, it's like, they're not as good as they thought. They get better. They get really better, like you saw with DBU. They get really better in not too long a time. But if you don't have that accountability with measuring it, how can you improve?
right. I think, and it's the internal cues that go along with that task, right? So like, and that's where I think a lot of guys today, and maybe this is a good discussion for us. We can talk about like what is repeatable, maybe in that realm.
Well,
If you
yeah,
want
there's
to have
always a margin. There's a margin of it's not perfectly repeatable. It's within a range always. Yeah, right.
right, I think when we talk about these kids and they understand, the internal cues to adjustments and to creating the outcome that they're looking for,
Right.
their
And
purpose.
sometimes those are subconscious. So if you set the task and their conscious is on the task, that subconscious is going to come up and help them And
Right.
that's where the mental part comes in with the mental focus, you know?
Absolutely. I think, how do you develop that at a young age? And is, I guess we can go to this question, which is command something that is uh, something that's learned over time, basically inherited
Yeah,
from
it's
volume,
skill.
or is
Yeah, it's
it
a
something
skill
that's,
through volume.
so I hear coaches all the time try to get or get players to move a certain way or to do a certain thing that ultimately outcome is command. My curiosity, my question, I guess, to you is: do you believe that a certain change mechanically results in a outcome in terms of command, or is that something that
A
uh,
little bit, a little bit. We had talked about this with a few coaches on the show, where I always equate it to your delivery as, say you were in a rowboat and you were trying to shoot with a gun, trying to shoot a target in a rowboat. You'd have to time yourself with the waves. You could do it. Like some coaches talk about variability and being able to adjust for this chaos, and I agree with that. But at the same time, I say, well, what if you were to stabilize your platform and shoot from flat ground? You can have a much better chance because your brain doesn't have to deal with the wobbling. So, or another example, I had dealt with audio for a long time, uh, 30 years. And in making a good audio product, I always thought, well, the best way to remove noise is to stop noise from getting in there in the first place. So the best way to deal with that variability is to reduce it in the first place. So if you have a still head, you're on target, your elbow, your eyes, everything's focused, your mechanical delivery would have a lot to do with your being able to throw strikes or command, you know, and because if you're not wobbling all over the place and going offline, you're going to have a better chance.
I think the eyes have a unique place in this, and it's something like gaze tracking. I haven't gotten into this, but I think something like gaze tracking may be valuable in the future on this front. Or, I think the eyes are so valuable, and I think the
Yeah.
internal, the ability to, again, going back to the idea, like when a kid is young, like having that ability, it may not be the thing that happens mechanically, right? We can cue something and the mechanic may not be what we actually get as outcome. But if I
Right.
think like keep my
Like,
shoulder in line, does that help me ultimately achieve the task of throwing this ball off a certain part of the board or for a strike? That there's something there that, again, that goes back to the awareness, the cognitive side of things here. But it's the feedback of the eyes, I think, and it's something to do with the ability to create internal cueing over volume. I think those are. I've always been interested in this. This is something that I don't know when we'll get an answer to it one day, but I
well,
think closer. So
yeah. Well, Gil Patterson of the A's, the coordinator for the A's, was saying about he tells all his pitchers to you're not pitching over the rubber, you're pitching over the plate. So their focus is the plate. It's not all around. Your eyes are on the plate, on the target. That's your focus. So I think your eyes being on target is important because that's where your focus is. Micah Posey was talking about yesterday that he wants to see his pitchers. He has cues for uh, different parts they would touch their body to let him know that they're thinking of all the things about focus, you know, gather, throw, so that internally that their mind is focused on the right thing for throwing the ball. Uh, I wanted to talk about one other thing that I thought I didn't expect from the target. Oh, actually, it's two. The first was how much the guys like it when they hear that pow when they hit the target. Have you seen that?
yeah, we joke about we're teaching our guys, oftentimes our best command guys. They have great PFP mechanics, and they're also hitting the target at the same time. That noise, they love the feedback of hitting that noise, and ultimately, it's become a joke with us that our hard throwing guys, like they throw it and they out of their windup. Obviously, we're not teaching certain things with around the fielding position or anything in house. It's not our intentions, but it's funny when the ball comes back pretty hot at the guy. It's like, whoa, hey, he threw that one pretty good. And
Yeah,
I
you
think
got to. Yeah, as a pitcher, you got to feel your position always.
Got to keep your head up in our facility. That's for sure. It's good. It's that noise is great. The feedback, we used a net for a while, and you're right. We did lose that audible, difference
Pop,
maker when guys
like
are
a
going hard.
like a catcher pop, right?
Yeah, that noise when we have somebody throwing 95 plus in here. I mean, you hear that noise from down the street. Like it's loud, right? In a good way. And so all the guys kind of stop and go, "Ooh, who is that?" And so
Yeah.
that's kind of a cool unintended, experience that we've had. We didn't know we were going to
Yeah.
have that.
The other one was that the target creates a common language, which I didn't expect, meaning that when you work with a pitcher for maybe a week or two with the target and you tell him, okay, throw me a slider at number 7, without looking at the target, he's going to know where 7 is, where where that is. Because part of the problem with people working on command and even control with just a catcher is that you're measuring the pitcher's ability to estimate where a strike is, and then his ability to throw where his estimated spot is. So in other words, you're asking him to guess where the spot is in his mind and then throw to it. With the target, it kind of creates this kind of visual where he's going to know where that spot is because the dimensions of the target were made from. I did an article in Baseball Prospectus about the universal strike zone. So that zone is actually the same zone you're going to get in a game. So if you practice always throwing to that zone, your pitchers are going to have a lot more success throwing in strikes and command in a real game.
I love the idea of the universal language. And we run this a lot too when we go out to the field, or we'll have guys, especially new guys, at their bullpen. They'll go, "Hey, go glove side," or "Go arm side," or "Hey, fastball away." They go to a righty or to a lefty. You hear catchers, "My glove side, your glove side." And it's like, you know, you think it's pretty obvious. Like you make those statements, and we kind of take it for granted that that's the language. But you're right. Like when we do talk about, we see that with workload in our facility, with our guys, where we've created a language around how much throwing load is done on a daily basis. So when I tell a guy, "Hey, you have an 8 today," that means that they have X amount of workload. They know approximately what they're going to do under that workload for the day. If you have a 20
Right.
today, they know approximately what that looks like. What I've found is that athletes start to strategize internally, amongst themselves, and they start to create, again, good athletes are going to create ways to challenge themselves. And so when you hear things like, "Hey, I'm going to throw a slider to the 7," like you said, you hear great athletes starting to say, "Hey, I'm going to throw all sliders today. I'm not going to miss above the 7. I'm not going to miss below the X." And so those are that's great technology working in an applicable space. And again, as a coach, I'm not having to go in and try to manipulate that, from a cognitive perspective. I can allow the technology to work and accomplish that for me. Otherwise, I'd have to go in and try to draw like a digital zone, or I'd have to,
Yeah.
illustrate on paper what I'm talking about, and get on the same page. In this case, we don't have to do that. The board is doing that for us. That's
Right.
creating
You're
that.
you're you're giving them the task. Like for example, if you really wanted to work on funneling, let's suppose you got a pitcher has a cutter and a slider. You could tell that pitcher, okay, I want your cutter. I want you to throw to 7 with both of those pitches. They're going to funnel. Same thing. You could tell him if he's got a cutter and a sinker, and you want to funnel those. Or let's say you want to work on funneling a 4 seam and a curveball. You would have he's aiming. If he's aiming for, say, the bottom number 8 with his curveball, he's starting it at O on the target. If he's aiming for O with his fastball, he's hitting O. So those two would funnel together. And I think it's a great way to teach funneling without actually, you don't even have to tell him it's funneling. You just tell him, I want you to throw these 2 pitches, one after another, at that spot.
Yeah, oh, that's great. It's again, it allows me as a coach to step back and to have better dialogue, build better relationship, and establish better cues with our athletes. I mean, that's it. That's if you get to that with any skill, any development of skill, if you have technology or aids, modalities that allow you to improve that, you're well on your way to seeing that athlete actually achieve. I mean, think about how many bullpens out there that are thrown on a daily basis, and there's no dialogue that happens between the coach or the player, or the player doesn't have a thought process. They're just aimlessly throwing. There's no context to those pitches.
Yeah,
Um,
and all they measure is, did you throw a ball or a strike? And it's like, well, even if you measure if they throw a ball or strike, you still are measuring that pitcher's ability to guess where a strike is because there's no target in front of him.
most bullpens that happen nationwide, if that coaching staff or that player group is actually tracking balls and strikes in a bullpen, you are probably in one of the more progressive programs in the entire country. That's crazy to state, but that's the reality. Most bullpens are thrown with no constraints. They're thrown with no thought except for, hey, that was a good pitch. That wasn't a good pitch. Keep going.
Oh, yeah.
20
Well,
pitches.
with as you saw with Sean, every bullpen was thrown with a target and accountable. We throw to certain spots. And currently, Fangraphs rates him as the #1 Yankees minor leaguer for command. I don't think that's an accident. He's got great skill. He works really hard. He's really smart. But I don't think that's an accident because there are other guys that are smart and work hard too. You know?
Well, his repetitive, so we always joke, habit building and habit construction is you could do the thing every day. Doesn't mean you're going to become an expert at it. You could do the same thing over and over and over and build it over time. Doesn't mean you're going to become an expert at it. Experts are typically the people that think through it a bit more. They're able to perform those tasks at a higher level. And so when we can start to think through, and this is what I try to encourage our athletes on, there is no definition of expert in many skills, but we can kind of compare ourselves to who the best is out there and say, hey, if I'm trying to be more like that guy, big league average or whatever that is, let's just label that as an expert for now. If I'm
Mhm.
trying to improve to be that, well, then I better have feedback. I better start somewhere
Yeah.
and be able to measure myself. And it seems so simple, but it's again, even I look back when I was a kid, like my best friend, I used to go in his backyard. I used to throw all the time. I'm not sure, I was trying to throw to his glove, but it was more about can I play catch with him and not airmail him than it was, throwing to a specific spot. So if you start a kid at a young age, again, not over engineering a young athlete, but if you bring this kid in at a young age, you gamify an environment for him, and then you start to put in these little contexts. You're going to find that these kids over time, they're going to have a much higher understanding much faster than their peers. And it goes from just playing catch with somebody to now, hey, I'm going to try to hit the seven. And
Yeah.
that's the nature of a good athlete. So how do we encourage that? How do I coach kids to be that? Man, I think uh, there's something special with the way the iPad, the Audible, the recording interacts with the athlete. And then as a coach or a parent, I want to see that over time. I've got to be able to sit here and go, hey, listen, I may not talk to my kid about this yet, but we may add more volume into focus for him to improve this thing. The numbers are oftentimes for me to understand and make better recommendations as a coach, right? Same with workload or same with whatever you want to apply in there, pitch design, etc. I have these massive dashboards for all this stuff for our company. And I go in and I look at all of our players. And I tell the kids on assessment day, like, hey, I could show you your track numbers. I could show you your 3Motion AI, biomechanics data. I could show you your workload. I could show you. But reality is what you need is a well-written program that's individualized to you to help you work on your weaknesses and make them strengths and to also understand your strengths. And
Yeah.
again, this is one of those components we've never really looked at on a granular scale. And I'm super excited that we're doing it. So
Cool. Yeah. It must be great working at your place because if you're a high school guy or a college guy or pro guy, you've got all the tools right there. In fact, you're a leader in training command now with the command tracker. I think you're the first training facility to have one.
It's awesome. That's really cool. I'm really, I mean, it's honestly, it has completely changed the way that I and our athletes look at what we're doing on a day. I've had some athletes ask me, flat out, like, hey, can I spend an extra 10 pitches today? I really want to get a feel for this pitch in this zone. And I've never had them ask me that before. Even though I've said it, even though I've encouraged them on it, we started working. So we're able to create shapes with certain pitches, obviously with things like TrackMan. But then when it comes down to, hey, the shape is great, but it's not always about just building the biggest shape. It's about using that shape to do something effective with it. I can already tell you the pro off season is gonna be a ton of fun with the guys because number one, they're super competitive, but number two, the attention to detail and how to get into the numbers with them. It's gonna be a different type of pro off season for us, and I think it's gonna return huge results next year for our guys.
I think it will too. I mean, you saw with DBU, they had their all-time strikeout record. They broke the record for strikeouts per nine. They've got great coaches and awesome facilities. I can't imagine how you can improve a skill that you can't measure to know if you've improved, right?
I'm with you. I do know that at the end of the day, one of the things that we've been really good about as a facility is asking great questions. And I said this earlier today to a guy that was working for us, and I said, hey, we're only going to be good at, we can only ask questions that we have systems to find answers for. And so I said, at the end of the day, I can want my guys to get better all I want to at pitch design. I can read all the blogs, I could, watch all the videos, I can do all the stuff. But if I don't have a way to actually go in and query that information, then what am I doing? I'm just taking a guess. I would like to say that the resources we provide them do make an impact on their career long term. And who knows? Maybe I'll give you a storyline next year on how Command Trakker changed one of our MLB guys to being an all-star or something. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some kind of study from you or something that you measure some athletes over time, and uh, you're going to see that they're going to have a big improvement, and it'll translate to the game as well.
we'll have a YouTube channel up soon. We'll be doing some of those small like case studies. We'll be doing some internal athlete stuff, and then also some we have a team that trains here. A3 is a program that's at our facility, and
Right.
we've got about 20, 25 guys. So we're going to do some studies amongst that population and see if we can improve some stuff and highlight that and showcase how we did it. Command Trakker is going to be a huge part of that. So I'm excited about that
Cool.
for sure.
Every guest I have on the show, I put up a list of 8 items that I think are important for a pitcher to have success. And I ask them to pick their top 4. Just tell me what's your number 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to show you on the screen, and just tell me what you think is your top 4. So we have character, command, changing speeds, movement, max velocity, sequencing, reading batters, and mental toughness. And now, character, I think, is a character of the person. Your attention to doing your work you do and being good to other people and all that.
For sure. Well, I think top 4 is what you want, right?
Yeah. Top 4 that is going to, if if you had to pick the top 4 to make a good pitcher.
Let's see here. That's tough.
Yeah, they're all needed, right?
I was gonna say, can I pick them all? I think if I had to put up at the top, I don't want to say 1 or 2, but velocity and command, they got to be together. I don't ever look at them exclusively. So I'm going to say, however you want to put as 1 or 2, you have command velocity or velocity command. I think that both they make up the success of somebody long term. So I think those could be argued either way. Both need to be skills that are developed over time, and I think those are both highly important. I'd put changing speeds is 3, and then I would put reading batters as 4 on there. I think those would be my top 4, and I think you could argue all of these to be in different spaces, but If you're throwing hard, if you have velocity, then you've got to be sequencing, I think, to some degree. To
Yeah, and if you're reading batters, to take advantage of that, you have to have command because to throw the
exactly.
pitch where you need to.
I think a lot of them could be argued that they're maybe together, and even like mental toughness. If you're reading hitters and you have the confidence enough to say that you're right in a pitch, then you have some sort of confidence or some sort of mental toughness around that. I don't know. I could say that there's a lot of
Yeah.
different
Well,
areas.
Dan DeQuette had a nice way of putting it, which was that he said you could be like a chef with this. Basically, you could take certain qualities out of that list and you could create a power pitcher. You could take certain qualities and create a finesse pitcher.
Right.
So, they're right. You're right that they're qualities that every pitcher should have, but at a given time, not everyone has all the qualities they need, and they have to work on others.
Right. I think it's funny, you have the industry. We always talk about like outliers, people that are, we watch pitchers and we like to talk about outliers, guys that are, kind of freak athletes. They do something unique. And so I always laugh when we talk about, I hear the arguments on Twitter all the time about this modality and this drill is better than this drill, and this, pitcher and this type of pitch is better than this pitch, meaning we try and do, try and throw more up in the zone with high spin versus somebody who throws from a lower slot and creates more horizontal movements. And I hear like Greg Maddux, for example. I hear Greg Maddux brought up that he was a great pitcher, but as much an anomaly as somebody who throws 105, and they all are unique for their own reasons. And so, like I said, like you said, I mean, you could argue any of those variables you could put up in different categories at the top. If you are an outlier in any of those spaces, you have an advantage. It's, can you improve the other
Absolutely.
three to
Abs-
exponentially make that top piece the value. And that's so yeah, it's pretty funny to kind of prospectively look at it that way.
yeah. In my first book, I talked about that and about pitches, that if you want to have success, your pitches have to be different from average because the batters are training and dealing with average all the time. So if your pitches are outside of average, they don't have an opportunity to deal with that very often.
Right, right. That's, again, going back to our discussion, how do you train something to be an outlier? Well, I think you have to start with it as a skill, or develop it as a skill, find a task, or put yourself in the right environment to develop that
Well,
skill.
that's another really good point. Before we wrap up, was that I described, Ron Wolforth?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to him. We were at DBU one day, and I was talking to him about how Sean developed. And that I saw gurus online and reading things, and they all had their ideas, and nothing was working for Sean. So, as an engineer, I said, okay, we're going to throw to the target, as hard as you can. We're going to videotape it with a iPad, and when you do well, I'm going to show them that video, and we say, hey, when your arm was a certain way, this has had a better result. And we could an iterative process to developing his style of throwing. So Sean developed his own style, the way Sean throws. Just like before every game, I always tell him, be you, meaning don't try to be like the other guy, be you. And I think too often guys are trained to be a certain way. That trainers will have a pigeonholes for different types of pitchers. Yet I don't think you can ever find out these outliers because they haven't been given a chance to find out who they are. Like I said to Dan DeQuette yesterday, was that suppose Dan DeQuette was the greatest baseball hitter of all time, and he was laughing. I said, but unless you let Dan DeQuette hit, you will never know how he hits. He could have the greatest style ever.
Right.
What
You
do you
have
think about that?
you have to let people compete and find out how they compete. And I think in too often, I always joke, KP may not be the right home for everybody. I'm not going to have success with every athlete that walks through our door. And part of that is we do things really well, and there's some things that we may not match up with somebody in something. I may not have that experience, or I may not have that ability to encourage the right environment to create skills. But again, this goes to like players will demonize or trash talk a facility or an organization or a program I go, they may not have had the right resources for you. It just wasn't the right fit. It's okay. Keep going down your journey. You learn something about yourself. Don't take it as a negative. You learn something about who you are as a competitor. That model didn't work for you. You need to find something else. But how often do we have the resources enough to start to underline why some of these guys are the way they are? And baseball is exponentially over the last 5, 6, 7 years, been able to start to evaluate players differently and provide them different understandings of who they are. Um, how do you know a pitch works or doesn't? I talk about pitch design this way. How do you know a pitch works or doesn't work
Well,
unless
well, yeah, I think the best way is through competition, meaning that if you train somebody, if they're only focused on process, uh, I think that's flawed if they never bothered to find out whether they got good results from it at some point. Because how do you know the process was right? And for example, for someone to find a new way to do something that may be better, they have to try something outside of the box. Now, I'll give an example. There was a program, a contest that was made years ago for, it was a war game. And people had certain resources, so many ships, so many men, and so much time, and they had to use them to the advantage to win this game. They had a computer with AI figure out, like when you use resources, you had so many resources to make one boat, so many to make one battleship, right? And you only had so many resources. So people would put out 10 battleships, 4 destroyers, and they would do it that way. The AI came in and used all the resources to make one ginormous battleship, and in one shot blew everything up. So, in other words, you never learn to think outside of the box until you try. Like, and the reason why was because it had a goal. Its goal was to win. It didn't care about your constraints. It didn't care about the normal way to do things. It said, how do I reach that goal? And I think when you talk about athletes self-organizing, well, if you give them a goal, I think you're going to find sometimes that they're going to self-organize in ways you hadn't thought of, and maybe it will be a new way.
Right, exactly right. The outlier is only the outlier when they become the outlier, right? Like
Yeah, when they give it a chance.
there's something unique about them we didn't appreciate until we saw the success and we went, oh wow, that guy's really good at that thing. I mean, I
Yeah,
laugh
now,
about even like sinkers, for example, right? Like sinkers 5 years ago weren't a thing. And then now you've got guys like Clay Holmes who's throwing, turbo sinkers at like 99, and we're going, oh, wait a minute,
yeah,
this thing's good again. Let's talk about that. And how many guys are going back to sinkers more regularly now to fit that. So you can't, again, you just can't demonize like the way certain things work. You got to let them play out in some cases and challenge. I love the idea of competitive environments in the off season. As we get close to spring training, guys are built up, they're ready to go, and they get to test their stuff. You can't just go from indoor under the roof with a track man to then just jumping right into the MLB season and expect that, look, things are going to be, apples to apples here. Like you may have built something, and just because the numbers, the statistics tell you that this is the right way to go, sometimes you really need to challenge that for yourself, and you don't want to be trying to figure that out mid-season. So
yeah.
there's
Well, for example, you know me with pitch grader and data for years, right? Uh, People are often surprised that I think the most important stat is, did you win? I don't. The numbers give me a guideline. Like I'm sure you're aware, you do the same thing. I think when you find, as people are using Command Trakker, you're going to find that they organize themselves to throw better strikes, better command, and you may not have to actually cue them. You just give them a task, and I think that's going to translate into a real game too.
Yeah, I love that. It's there needs to be more competition in training, and I think
Yeah.
we can probably end it on that statement alone. There probably needs to be more competition in training. But
Well, now they compete against themselves at your facility.
man Trakker has been a huge change for us trying to get there. That's for sure. So that's been
Yeah,
awesome.
because they always say, you don't compete against another guy. You want to compete against, like when they say get 1% better, you're competing against you from yesterday, and so the target lets you do that.
I love it. It's been a huge change
Cool.
for us.
All right. So it's great talking with you. Thanks for coming on, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, Wayne. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.